Welcome back to Bullet Catcher Gaming. This is of course Ghost Recon Breakpoint. Now this is the second in our video series of real life operators. It's probably not going to be a short one. In our first video on this, I detailed Christian Craighead of the 22nd SAS and recreated him in the game. Christian, unlike the operators I will cover today, is still alive and well. Now this video series is going to be important to me, and it is important to me, and I want to get things right. And I want to make sure we do right by the people we're talking about. Now this video is going to feature two amazing warriors who are sadly no longer with us. I had a long think about this. I've battled my conscience somewhat over the week, but I've decided that if we cover operators who are no longer living, we shouldn't create their characters within the game. These men deserve our respect, and they died for our freedoms, and I'm not sure that creating their likeness in a game is the right way to give them that respect. Now I love hearing what you guys have to say and the feedback you provide, and I may have this wrong, so I would appreciate you giving me your opinions here. If you think recreating them in the game is a great way to show these incredible men in the light they deserve, I'll change this moving forward based on your feedback. Also, if you think I need to reduce the amount of history included, as this one is quite in depth, then please let me know. Now, I'm going to be using some Ghost Recon background footage still with a random character kind of dressed in similar garb from around that time period. It's not supposed to be accurate to the men that I am covering today. I did really appreciate all your feedback suggestions from the Christian Craighead video, and I am going to do my best to create a video from all of the suggested warriors that you've mentioned so far, but I do want to do these men justice whether they're alive or dead, so please bear with me so I can do the relevant research and make sure I get each one right. So let's discuss today's operators, two people who inspire me on a daily basis. You may know them from the film Black Hawk Down, which in my opinion is one of the best films ever made. Yes, it does consolidate some characters with others from the real mission to help the narrative of the story and give it good pace, but overall it does an amazing job of recreating that famous battle and realising Mark Bowden's incredible book of the same title. Master Sergeant Gary Ivan Gordon was born on August 30th, 1960, and he died on October 3rd, 1993. Gary Gordon was born in Lincoln, Maine, and graduated from Matanaquook Academy in 1978. He enlisted in the US Army the same year at age 18, and after serving with the 2nd Battalion of the 10th Special Forces Group, he was chosen to join the 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, also known as Delta Force, as a sniper. Before deploying with his unit to Somalia, he married his wife Carmen, and together they had 2 children. Sergeant First Class Randall David Shughart was born on August 13th, 1958, and also died on October 3rd, 1993. Randy Shughart was born in Lincoln, Nebraska, into an Air Force family. He joined the Army in 1976 after completing the basic training courses. Shughart successfully completed AIT, which is Advanced Individual Training, at the Airborne School, and in 1978 was assigned to the 2nd Ranger Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment at Fort Lewis, Washington, and several months later he completed a pre-Ranger course currently known as SIRT, the Small Unit Ranger Tactics, and was granted a slot to attend Ranger School. He graduated that and earned the Ranger tab. Shughart left active duty and went into the Army Reserve in June of 1980, but then in December 1983 Shughart returned to active duty, and the following year attended Special Forces training, and Shughart was also assigned to Delta Force and was transferred to Fort Bragg, North Carolina in June of 1986. In September 1991, severe fighting broke out in Mogadishu, which continued in the following months and spread throughout the country. With over 20,000 people killed or injured by the end of the year, these wars led to the destruction of Somalia's agriculture, which in turn led to starvation in large parts of the country. The international community began to send food supplies to halt the starvation, but vast amounts of food were hijacked and brought to local clan leaders, who routinely exchanged it with other countries for weapons. An estimated 80% of the food was stolen. These factors led to even more starvation, from which an estimated 300,000 people died and another 1.5 million people suffered between 91 and 92. And in July 1992, after a ceasefire between the opposing clan factions, the United Nations stepped in. Operation Provide Relief began first in August 1992, when then US President George H.W. Bush announced that US military transports would support the multinational UN relief effort in Somalia. 10 C-130s and 400 people were deployed to Mombasa, Kenya, airlifting aid to Somalia's remote areas, reducing reliance on truck convoys. The C-130s delivered 48,000 tons of food and medical supplies in 6 months to international humanitarian organisations trying to help Somalia's more than 3 million starving people. When this proved inadequate to stop the massive death and displacement of the Somali people, now at 500,000 dead and 1.5 million refugees, the US launched a major coalition operation to assist and protect humanitarian activities in December of 1992. This operation, called Operation Restore Hope, saw the US assuming the unified command in accordance with Resolution 794. The US Marine Corps landed the 15th Marine Expeditionary Unit in Mogadishu with elements of the 2nd Battalion 9th Marines and the 3rd Battalion 11th Marines, secured nearly one-third of the city, the port and the airport facilities within 2 weeks. With the intent to facilitate airlifted humanitarian supplies, elements of the 2nd Battalion 9th Marines, which is the HMLA 369, that's the Marine Light Attack Helicopter Squadron 369 of Marine Aircraft Group 39, 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing from Camp Pendleton, and the 9th Marines quickly secured routes to Badawa, Baladogle and Kismayo. Then they were reinforced by the US Army's 10th Mountain Division. At the Conference on National Reconciliation in Somalia, held on the 15th of March 1993 in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, all 15 Somali parties agreed to the terms set out to restore peace and democracy. Within a month or so, however, by May 1993, it became clear that although a signatory to the March Agreement, Mohammed Farah Aidid's faction would not cooperate in the agreement's implementation. Aidid began to broadcast anti-UN propaganda on Radio Mogadishu after believing that the UN was purposefully marginalising him in an attempt to rebuild Somalia. Lieutenant General Sevik Bir ordered the radio station shut down in an attempt to quash what could turn into a rebellion. On the 5th of June 1993, Aidid ordered SNA militia to attack a Pakistani force that had been tasked with the inspection of an arms cache located at the radio station. Possibly out of fear, this was a task force sent to shut down the broadcast. The result was 24 dead and 57 wounded Pakistani troops, as well as 1 wounded Italian and 3 wounded American soldiers. On the 6th of June 1993, the UN Security Council passed Resolution 837 for the arrest and prosecution of the persons responsible for the death and wounding of those peacekeepers. On the 12th of June, US troops started attacking targets in Mogadishu in hopes of finding Aidid, a campaign which lasted until the 16th of June. On the 17th of June, a $25,000 warrant was issued by Admiral Jonathan Howe for information leading to Aidid's arrest, but he was never captured. Howe also requested a rescue force after the Pakistani deaths. On the 8th of August 1993, Aidid's militia detonated a remote control bomb against a US military vehicle, killing 4 soldiers. 2 weeks later, another bomb injured 7 more. In response, the then US President Bill Clinton approved a proposal to deploy a task force composed of elite special forces units, including 400 US Army Rangers and Delta Force operators. On the 22nd of August 1993, the unit deployed to Somalia under the command of Major General William F. Garrison commander of the Special Multidisciplinary Joint Special Operations Command, which is JSOC at the time. The force consisted of B Company 3rd Battalion 75th Ranger Regiment under the command of Captain Michael D. Steele, C Squadron 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Gary L. Harrell, a deployment package of 16 helicopters and personnel from the 1st Battalion 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, also known as the 160th SAW, which included MH-60 Blackhawks and MH-6 Little Birds. Also Navy SEALs from the Navy Special Warfare Development Group, the DevGRU, and Air Force Pararescuemen and Combat Controllers from the 24th Special Tactics Squadron. This Special Operations Force would try and put an end to Aidid by capturing his foreign minister Omar Salad El-Mim and his top political advisor Mohammed Hassan Awali, hoping their capture would break the organisation or lead to Aidid's whereabouts. On the afternoon of the 3rd of October 1993, informed that the two leaders of Aidid's clan were at a residence in the Black Sea neighbourhood in Mogadishu, the task force sent 19 aircraft, 12 vehicles and 160 men to arrest them. This operation was named Gothic Serpent. The two Somali leaders were quickly arrested by Delta. However, armed militiamen and civilians, some of them women and children, converged on the target area from all over the city, and the Battle of Mogadishu began. Shortly into the battle, at about 16:20 in the afternoon, one of the Blackhawks, Super 6-1, piloted by CW3 Cliff Elvis Walcott and CW3 Donovan Ball Briley, was shot down by an RPG-7. Both pilots were killed in a resulting crash, and two of the crew chiefs, Staff Sergeant Ray Dowdy and Staff Sergeant Charlie Warren, were severely wounded. Staff Sergeant Daniel Bush and Sergeant Jim Smith, both Delta snipers, survived initially and began defending the site. Not long after this, a second Black Hawk helicopter, call sign Super 6-4, piloted by Michael Durant, was shot down by an RPG at around 16:40. Most of the ground assault team had arrived at the first crash site for a rescue operation. Upon reaching the first crash site, about 90 Rangers and Delta Force operators found themselves under heavy fire. Despite air support, the support team was effectively trapped for the night. With a growing number of wounded needing shelter, they occupied several nearby houses and were confined for occupants for the battle's duration. Above the second crash site, two Delta snipers, Master Sergeant Gary Gordon and Sergeant First Class Randall Shughart, were insistent on being inserted on the ground to help their stricken brothers. This was refused multiple times due to the large number of Somalis approaching the wrecked Black Hawk. When it was realised a short time later that the ground force would be unable to reach them, they were given the go-ahead and were inserted by Super 6-2, piloted by Mike Gaffina and Jim Yacone. Super 6-2 had kept up their fire support for Gordon and Shughart on their insertion, but an RPG struck Super 6-2 and they had to leave the two Delta men alone. Super 6-2 did manage to land safely back at their base. And once on the ground, Gordon and Shughart, armed with only their personal weapons and sidearms, fought their way to the downed Black Hawk. By this time, more Somalis were arriving, who were intent on either capturing or killing the American servicemen trapped in Super 6-4. Gordon and Shughart were the best of the best in the American military machine. They were Delta Force, veterans of countless firefights and career soldiers who always remained cool no matter how ridiculously the odds were stacked against them. The two men rushed to the cockpit, checked on the pilot and pulled him from the wreckage without further aggravating the man's grievous injuries. They then moved him and the three wounded crew members back away from the wreckage, gave some ammunition to Durant and proceeded to set up the best perimeter they could muster, considering they were just two guys preparing to stand off against pretty much the entire city of Mogadishu with nothing more than a pair of rifles and pistols. The mob arrived. Gordon and Shughart knew they were fighting a well-armed militia, but hoped that they might be able to hold the attack off long enough for the rescue to show up. But that wasn't likely, and they knew it. These guys were the cavalry, the only thing standing between an angry throng of Somalis and 4 critically wounded Americans. They most probably in the back of their minds knew this was a suicide mission, but they believed in their training. Militia troops swarmed in from every side, scrambling over the rubble, AK-47s spewing lead. Some of them just ran screaming out into the middle of the road without any cover, desperately trying to reach the Americans and achieve glory in combat, or die for the cause in the process, of which of course Gordon and Shughart helped them out with the latter. Ducking behind cover, popping and firing, the Delta snipers laid down a wall of death for anyone who came close, blasting away with burst fire with their rifles and switching to double tap pistol fire when necessary, trying their darndest to separate the armed militia targets from the innocent civilians on the street. Carrying only those 2 firearms, this pair of death-dealing Delta operators fought tenaciously, refusing to give up ground, defending at all costs, and surgically mowing down their foes, while assault rifle rounds pinged off nearby debris and enemy troops chucked hand grenades at their positions. Now, there is some debate over who was killed in action first. The official military documents say it was Shughart. Michael Durant is pretty sure that it was Gordon. Whatever the case may be, one of the snipers was finally shot with a mortal wound. Durant recalls the operative's last word as simply, "Damn, I'm hit," said plainly in a matter-of-fact way that sounded almost irritated. The lone surviving Delta operator circled back around the nose of the Black Hawk, back into Durant's field of vision, handed the wounded pilot an assault rifle, and asked if there was any extra ammo on the helicopter. Durant told him about the M16s the crew chiefs kept between their seats, so the lone survivor rushed over, grabbed a handful of mags, and got on the radio to request a status report. He was told that reinforcements would be there in a little while, and he knew exactly what that meant. The Delta operative showed no emotion as he walked back over to Durant, stopped only to say one thing, "Good luck," before circling back around the front of the helicopter and taking the entire city on by himself. When this fearless soldier ran out of rifle ammunition, he took on the mob with only his pistol. But finally, after a heroic last stand, worthy of one of the greatest warriors in history, the last member of this unbelievably badass Delta sniper team was finally overwhelmed by a coordinated attack from the Somali National Alliance, and the position was overrun by a sea of militia troops and Somali citizens. Their bodies were stripped and dragged around the streets in a disgusting show of defiance. But Gary Gordon and Randy Shughart's sacrifice would not have been in vain. Thanks to their ferocious defence of the crash site, giving up their lives to aid their fellow soldiers, Michael Durant was spared by the mob, imprisoned briefly, and survived to return home to his wife and kids. If these 2 men had done nothing, Durant would have certainly been killed while still strapped into his pilot's chair. The Somalis would report at least 25 men dead at the crash site of Super 6-4, with dozens more wounded and injured. Gary Gordon and Randy Shughart will be posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor for their actions, the first soldiers since the Vietnam War to receive this honour. From the first moment I knew of these 2 men, they've left a lasting legacy on my own life, and maybe they do yours too. Because to be honest, when I have a bad day, or you feel that maybe courage has deserted you, I actually think of these incredible human beings whose sacrifice makes me think, well, if they could do that, then I can get through this. If you want more information on these two warriors, then I would recommend reading In the Company of Heroes by Michael Durant, whose words will give these two great people a lot more respect than mine ever will. I'm going to leave you today with the words of Gary Gordon to his family before Operation Gothic Serpent began. My love, you are strong and you will do well in life. I love you and my children deeply. Today and tomorrow, let each day grow and grow. And never give up, even when things get you down. So in closing, my love, tonight tuck my children in bed warmly, tell them I love them, then hug them for me, and give them both a kiss goodnight for Daddy. Thank you for watching.